Hey, this is Mike the Run Testers, and in this video I'm going to be talking about two watches. The first is the Garmin Forerunner 245, and it's update the Garmin Forerunner 255. Now the reason I wanted to do a video on these two watches is that first and foremost they are both very good running watches, and I imagine you will start seeing them in a lot of sales, whether it's Black Friday, whether it's leading up to Christmas, and generally during the year you can kind of see these watches kind of reduced from the usual retail price. Now, these are watches that we've kind of thoroughly tested ourselves. They're both very good watches. They kind of sit at that kind of mid-range price, giving you kind of more advanced features, but still a kind of more attractive price than things like the Forerunner 955, 745. And you can still get a very good running experience. Now, as I said, we've tested these watches a lot. And if you're looking at these two watches and wondering what the key kind of wins, the gains and losses that you're going to get going from the 255 over the 245, and whether you can actually save yourself some money and go for the older watch. And I should say that there's a kind of 4-year difference between these launches of these two watches. Then what I'm going to do is kind of quickly run down what I would consider, from a running perspective, the key things that may sway you going for one watch over the other. So I'm going to take you through the key things based on my testing and the team's testing that would help you kind of decide between these two watches and whether you should go for the Garmin Forerunner 245 or the newer Garmin Forerunner 255. Okay, so I'm going to start with design, and I'll start by saying that in terms of living with these two watches, it's very, very similar. There are some small things that I think potentially you can get over going from one watch over the other, but ultimately the experience is going to feel very similar. If you like a small, kind of light, kind of comfortable watch, a good screen, a screen that's good, offers good visibility, kind of outdoors when you really want it, then those are what are the things you're going to get on both of these watches. Now, with the 245, you are getting one size option, you're getting a transfective display, you're getting a polymer case, you are getting removable bands, and from that point of view, I think absolutely fine. On the 255, you're getting two size options, and they pretty much sit either side of the size that you're getting with the 245. So in terms of that case size, it's not massively different. On the 255, you are getting a polymer case as well. You're getting removable straps as well. On the larger 255 watch, you're getting a bigger screen, but ultimately I don't think it's a massive difference in terms of the experience you're getting. They still feel very kind of smallish watches to kind of live with ultimately. Now, as I mentioned, you do have music additions as well, which adds that kind of additional music player. And that music player, the main thing to remember about that is that it will drain the battery life quicker when you are streaming music and you kind of store your music onto the watch. So that's something to keep wary of. If you don't want to use music features, you still go out running with your phone and kind of listen to your music from your phone, which I think most of us do anyway, then I would say go for the non-music version. If you really are set on having a watch with a music player on it, then go for the 255 music. Great, you'll have music to kind of pilot onto it, but just be wary of the fact that when you are streaming kind of offline with your music kind of stored on the watch, it is going to hit the battery a bit more. So for me, in terms of the design, I think very, very similar in terms of experience you're getting. You are getting two case design sizes on the 255. On the 245, you're getting similar materials, you're getting one size, but ultimately I think the watches, from a design point of view, are very, very similar. And I think if you're looking for a light, small, comfortable watch to live with a good screen in terms of visibility, then both are going to serve you very, very well. Okay, so let's get into the key software features that are really going to dictate the kind of experience that you're going to get with these watches. Now, I'll start with the sports tracking. Now, what I've said, we're going to focus on kind of the running focus features. I think if you are looking for a multi-sport watch, it's worth kind of covering that a little bit here. Now, in terms of what you're getting on the 245 and 255, it's very similar in terms of the modes that you are getting. But on the 255, you are, I would say, crucially for some people, you are getting the ability to track open water swimming, and you are getting a triathlon mode as well here too. So if that's something that you want from your kind of sports tracking, that is what you're going to get in the 255, and you're not going to get that on the 245. So if you care about those kind of sports tracking modes outside of running, it's very similar in terms of the running modes, but in terms of what you're getting outside of running, you're getting a little bit more from the 255. As I said, I think the key ones for me would be the open water swimmer and the triathlon kind of modes, which if you are kind of a swimmer, you know, swim outside of the pool and you do triathlons or want something that works for multidiscipline sports, then I would go for the 255 over the 245 from that point of view. So into those kind of running focus features, what you win or lose going from the 255 or the 245. Now, this is how I kind of see it in terms of the key things that you're getting on the 255 over the 245. The first thing I would say is you're getting more running profiles on the 255. So you can track virtual racing and running. You've got ultra running mode as well, which you don't have on the 245. Other things I would also pick out is that the some additional metrics that you're getting on the 255. So you're getting grade adjusted pace, and you're also getting running power from the wrist. And the things that you care about or interested about, then those are there. And if you're looking at additional metrics to kind of gauge how well you may perform in different kind of running terrain, then potentially those features will be there for you. The other big feature I would also pick out that you don't get on the 245 is a multi-frequency positioning kind of chipset that you're getting on the 255 that you won't get on the 245 simply because it's not there, it's hardware, and you're not going to get it updated on the 245, where some of the software features you might see on the kind of roll down to the 245. Now that multi-frequency positioning is something we've seen on the Forerunner 955, those kind of top end Epics and Phoenix watches. Essentially it's about giving you a kind of chipset, a kind of satellite support, potentially help you kind of improve that accuracy when, you know, it can be bad or very spotty. So if you're running around kind of tall buildings, if you are kind of going into kind of deep kind of foresty areas, tall wooded kind of forests, big trees, and you know that can, you know, have an impact on the kind of satellite kind of tracking that you're getting. The 255 aims to improve that performance that you would get on the 245. Now, we've had mixed experience from that. I know Nick has not had an amazing experience with it. It hasn't been spotless for him. I've had a pretty good experience with it, and I do see it as an improvement on the 245 from the kind of positioning accuracy point of view. The thing to remember with that multi-frequency positioning mode is that it will hit the battery a lot more than kind of using it in that kind of full GPS mode that you will have on the 245. So that's something to keep mind of, really. So for me, in terms of the kind of big things between the 255 and the 245 from a kind of pure running software and kind of hardware point of view, I would say those extra running modes, I would say those extra metrics that you're getting, the kind of running power and grade adjusted pace. And then you've got that multi-frequency positioning support as well. I will actually mention as well the kind of navigation support is similar across these two watches. I think it's going to be an important thing for everyone. You're getting breadcrumb navigation, so not that full mapping support. You're getting those top-end Garmin watches. But if you're using things like Pace Pro, pacing strategies, you want to kind of follow a route and you want that kind of simple, or you can live with that kind of simple navigation support, then both of these watches are going to give you that. And from a kind of running focus performance, they're both very, very good. But as I mentioned, those are the key things that you're going to get on the 255 over the 245 based on our testing. Now, if you're looking at these two watches in terms of them being watches that you can use to help you train, to offer you kind of richer training insights, and probably if you're not looking at those kind of cheaper Forerunner 55 and 45 watches, that's probably a reason, or one of the reasons you might be looking at this watch. Now, from that point of view, again, they are very similar, and there's some key things that I think are good to see across both these watches in terms of the kind of training insights. So things like training load, training effect, those are things you will see. They work with Garmin Coach. You can follow those, what I would say, very good Garmin Coach kind of training plans to help you kind of tackle kind of 5k, 10k, half marathon distance as well. You have the ability to build workouts, download workouts to the watch. You can do interval training them as well. Now, the key things I would say that I've picked out that I think separate these two watches a little bit. The first thing I would say is you've now, on the 255, you have the kind of improved interval training mode, so it gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of how you can create those sessions and those kind of sessions you can follow on the watch. So that would be a key thing that I've picked out, I think, from a training point of view, that you get on the 255 that you don't get on the 245. The other thing I would say that you get on the 255 over the 245 that I think stands out, you're in getting the kind of training load focused kind of insight, which you don't get on the 245, and that's going to be pulled down for the more expensive watches, and that just gives you another dimension in terms of understanding where you are kind of dedicating your training to, essentially, and it lets you see that in a very kind of visual way. So that is a kind of really nice feature to have as well that you get on the 255. The other feature I would also probably pick out from a training point of view is HRV status, which you get on the 255 and you don't get on the 245. Now, we've talked about HRV status in our kind of main 2.5 review, and essentially that's looking at heart rate variability to give you a better understanding of how you're recovering and the kind of stresses are being put on the body, and better understanding whether you should maybe take a rest day, or maybe you're probably not in the best state to do a kind of really tough session. Now, as we've talked about in the review, HRV status on its own as a kind of isolated metric feels okay to use, but it lacks the kind of training readiness mode which does encompass that HRV status, which you get on the 955 and the kind of more expensive Garmin watches. Really puts it into perspective what that HRV status means. So for me, while it is a feature that separates the two watches, unless you really want to delve into what it means yourself and try to contextualize it, then it's probably not going to be that massively useful or a massive sway. But so for me, from a training point of view, on the 255, you're getting that HRV status, you're getting that kind of additional kind of training metrics on insights like training load focus, and then you're getting that kind of improved interval training mode as well, which I think, if you use your watches for kind of interval training and you like to have more ability to kind of create those sessions, then that's what you're going to get in the 255 over the 245. But across everything else, they're pretty similar in terms of those kind of training features you have at your disposal. If you do care about using these watches like smartwatches, then they're pretty much identical in terms of the experience that you should get from these watches. They both work with Android phones and iPhones. They have access to Connect IQ Store. You've all got the same support in terms of payments, notifications, the music support as well, if you pay for extra music edition as well. The only thing I would say probably I've noticed in my time is that you have a stereo and mono listening mode on the 255 when you are streaming music, which should help improve the battery life that you're getting when you are streaming and tracking at the same time. Other features to kind of pick out, you're getting that kind of health snapshot feature if you care about that, which kind of lets you look at kind of multiple metrics from one measurement from the watch. You are also getting the morning report feature, which you wake up, it gives you an idea of some of the things that are going on in your day, your kind of latest metrics, so sleep, for instance. You get that on the 255, you don't get that on the 245. I quite like that feature. It's not going to be a massive kind of deal breaker for most people, but it is there on the 255 where you don't get it on the 245. So yeah, from a smartwatch point of view, very similar. A few little extras on the 255, but not a massive amount to really sway you over one from the other from a smartwatch point of view. So I'm going to talk about battery life, and ultimately when you get an update to a new watch, one of the biggest things that you see that's going to be different is the improvement in battery life, and that is on paper the case with the 255 against the 245. Now you're getting double the kind of smartwatch battery life, you're getting an upgrade in terms of the GPS battery life as well. Ultimately, based on my experience, though, these watches are good for about a week. Now, potentially, you could get longer on the 255, but I think ultimately you are looking, if you're training regularly using the GPS on a regular basis, then it's going to kind of max out to about a week ultimately. And if you're using that multi-frequency, kind of multi-band mode on the 255, that is going to hit the battery life, GPS battery life in general as well, and you will see a kind of more of a drop-off in general from that point of view. But if you are looking at these two watches and wondering how they're going to last you and whether you're training with them on a regular basis, I would say you are basically getting a week from them. You may be getting a little bit more on the 255, but ultimately I think week is what you're looking at for both of these watches. Okay, verdict time. Garmin Forerunner 255 and Garmin Runner 245. Now the first thing I would say is that despite there being 4 years difference between the launches of these watches, I do still think it's worth going for the Forerunner 245. I still think it is a good watch. Now, the problem you do have is that some features, software features, don't always roll back into those older watches, but some that have appeared on the 255, they now do appear on the 245. So it is, and it has become a better watch. Now, the way I kind of see it in terms of the biggest gains that you're getting on the 255 over the 245, and might be the reasons to go for the newer watch over the older watch, are these. The first being those additional sports profiles and modes. So the open water swimming and the triathlon modes, if you do those kind of things, you're not going to get those on the 245. The big running thing is the multi-frequency positioning kind of chipset that you're getting. So getting that improvement in GPS accuracy. If that's something that you have an issue with generally, then the 255 is going to give you an enhanced performance from that point of view. I also think I would add additionally that I think the heart rate monitoring performance is a bit better from the wrist on the 255 compared to 245, and that would be another reason to go for it, though you can pair external heart rate monitors to both of these watches. And then outside of that, you're getting some extra kind of training insights on the 255 that you don't get on the 245, so that kind of training load focus, that kind of enhanced interval training mode as well. Those may be features potentially that you might look at, and running power and grade adjusted pace as well, but I don't think these are the biggest things. Ultimately, it's very consistent in terms of the features you're getting here from a pure running performance kind of training, the level of battery life that you can expect to get from these watches. They're very similar, and those are reasons why you would still arguably, or could still arguably, go for the 245. So for me, I think both very good watches. The key wins on the 255 are those extra sports profiles. I would say that multi-frequency positioning support that you're getting, and some extra training modes that are not going to be massive for everyone, but if you're looking for a little bit more from that kind of training and analysis perspective, you're getting a little bit more on the 255 in comparison, but not a massive amount. So yeah, that's kind of my take on how the 255 compares to the 245. Both very good running watches. Clearly some wins for the 255, but the 245 is still a good watch, and if you can pick it up for a good price, I still think it's worth investing in. Okay, so there you have it. That is our take on how the Garmin Forerunner 255 compares to the Forerunner 255. Hopefully that video has proved useful, particularly when there's probably going to be sales on these two watches and you're still trying to decide whether you can go potentially for the older watch, or you should go for the kind of newer version of the Forerunner, or the kind of mid-range Forerunner watching Garmin's range. Now, if you've got any questions about these watches or anything else that you think you might want to know about how these two watches compare, let us know in the comments. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about latest videos, and yeah, we'll see you for the next Run Testers video.